what did we do? What did we do in Hollywood or whatever, in culture, to piss off the entire like middle chunk of the country and make them feel so bad about themselves that now they have disassociated from reality?
Honestly, I think it's, if you want to look at it from that angle of what we've done on the coasts, is we've enjoyed life, and we've showed that you can be productive without being puritanical. And this in and of itself is threatening to their lifestyle. And I say this as someone who grew up in the Midwest, granted Chicago, so city, but then, lived in mid-Missouri, lived in central Illinois. So I have walked amongst these people. And it's the mentality that, if you get what you want, it's the same mentality that allows these people to attack gay marriage by saying that same-sex marriage attacks the sanctity of marriage. And if you look at 5 gay couples that have gotten married in the last year, what have they done that has taken something away from your marriage?
Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the answer. Nothing. It's not like there's a finite amount of marriage and love on the earth, and them gays are taking it away from us. It's not.
It's a scarcity mentality. I feel
right.
They feel like happiness or joy or success is scarce. Like if one person gets it, the other person can't get it. So they're fighting to get it.
And if you're becoming happy doing something that doesn't make me happy, you are obviously doing something wrong.
Yeah, and also if they see people who are not afraid of the boogeyman they're afraid of, which, let's say what it is, they are very Christian, they're scared of hell. If we're not scared of hell and we're like living and being happy without it, then they feel more tempted to join our side, and then they're like, no, but then I'm going to go to hell. So they feel like threatened, so they have to like clamp down harder on everything we do, because they probably feel like if they don't lash out at us, then God's going to hold them accountable for not lashing out at us, and then they are going to go to hell. So it's like this weird.
Well, it's victim blame. By certain standards, you two are sitting here in the studio completely scantily clad, and me,
in my frumpy Saturday vest.
I can see your upper arms, both of you, which is immodest in some cultures. So by that virtue, I don't want to be tempted. You two need to put burqas on, and the fact that because it's a different God, and the clothing is slightly different, Christians are unable to see, and I'm not all Christians, but the hardcore conservative fundamentalist Christians are unable to see that they are the American Taliban.
Yeah, the parallels are huge. Have you read the I Am Malala?
I honestly haven't.
It is an excellent book. Listeners, go read it. But she talks about how the Taliban grew and how the religiosity in Pakistan, it went from being like sort of benign and just like, they were pretty conservative and stuff, but everything was still in this like safe zone. And then little by little, there were a few radicals on the side, and they had a radio show. That's like Rush Limbaugh. They had a radio show, and that guy would slowly brainwash people. And it started off with simple things like, hey, you should stop doing drugs, you should stop smoking, you should stop things. And then eventually it was, let's pull the women aside, all the men leave the room, ladies, make sure you cover yourself from head to toe and never leave the house. And people eventually started buying into that, and then add like the threat of violence, and then more and more people feel threatened and buy into it. Next thing you know, you've got a really big crisis on your hands in a whole region. And looking at the way our country has been going and the momentum we've had, it's pretty similar. It's not like we don't have those radicals. When I was in college, I was pretty Christian. I was.
I was too.
I was not.
But
you were always Jewish.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But I had always been a Christian.
Only room for one long-haired Jew in this life of mine, and that's me.
But I was pretty Christian in high school too. But like to the degree of like, save myself for marriage type Christian in high school. But in college, I went to Arizona for a semester, and that's where I found like churches that are off the deep end, where like they don't let men and women talk to each other.
The
like,
blinders were off.
Yeah, like I remember going to a Bible study and thinking it was a normal Bible study where we just talk about like being better people. And they start talking about how like I didn't even kiss my husband on the face until our day of our wedding. And I'm like, what? Well, that's crazy.
Begs the question, where did you kiss him?
And some of them were saying they only held hands. And eventually I left, but I talked to a friend of mine who had been at the same church for a while, and she said she had to get out because it became cult-like. And they suck you in because they all seem very nice on the outside, and then they're really
they mix truths with lies. There's
radical.
Yeah, they mix truth and lie together, and I think that's the way they... Because I think even like the example of Pakistan versus the United States, like Pakistan is a country that legitimately was oppressed by the world, So I think that's the only reason why radicalism grew faster there is because there was a legitimate fear. It is slower here because we're kind of the world's, oppressors, and it's a rich country. So I think that's the only thing that slows us down here. But it's the same, there's the parallels are very real, and the reason why we're more apathetic because we have too much. We have excess here, and as that changes, as our economy gets weaker, you're going to see radicalism growing a lot faster. I mean, it's also I think we're just as radical, just that we have so much power with our radical. Like we could go and start a war anywhere. We've been doing that, so we are as radical as anyone else. We kind of get away with it because of our...
I mean, it depends on what we're being radical of. Like, we're radical capitalists, and that's, in a sense, like, that's been our religion, but we also have this growing force that is that radical Christian side, which everyone should see.
It's very cyclical, because in my lifetime alone, you saw with the Reagan Revolution in the 80s, and the big upswing of the moral majority, and Jerry Falwell and the evangelicals. And then ultimately, the evangelicals were largely proven to be frauds. And, they were caught whoring. They were caught, scamming money, basically doing all the non-Christian things that, they had been preaching against. And once the hypocrisy was brought into the light, they sort of, faded back down. But like we've seen with Trump, there's a certain percentage of the population that is always going to buy into that sideshow carnival hucksterism, and they're going to keep buying the snake oil because, well, maybe I just got a bad bottle. It's he wouldn't be allowed to sell this to us if it didn't work. So this snake oil has to cure all the diseases. I just must be using it wrong.
I think there's something more there. There's something darker and deeper that goes across religion, that, like outside. Like if there was a Venn diagram, right? There's like two circles, and I think that my mental visual's so off. But point being, I think that dark side is in and out of religion. Some
absolutely.
people excuse it, and other people, like, they don't even try to hide it with Jesus. They just are horrible. And unfortunately, what Trump has exposed is he's not a moral guy at all. Like, if it was about what's good, then people wouldn't support Trump, even if they were Christians. If they were real Christians and real strict, they'd be like, no, this guy isn't, like, sexually
but they
assaulted
find a way to justify it.
There are people who, they're not Christian. They're just literally shitty like this, people. They're fascists.
This
they don't care.
neo-Nazi guy, what's his name?
Which one? There are so many. Steve Bannon, Richard Spence.
He's not a person of faith at all, but he literally believes that he's a supreme race. But so it's.
Well, thank God he's not bringing religion into it.
but it is his religion, right? It's his philosophy, his false worldview. I think I don't know. I don't know what you guys think of it, but how much of it? I think in the U.S. we have this belief, and I grew up with it too, that we're responsible for our destiny, and I think that has a lot to do with spiting somebody else for doing well, because it's proven fact that we actually really don't have that much control over our success. It's mostly what you're born into. Every legitimate sociological study and whatever, it kind of points to this.
Wait, so you're saying that when Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and noted brain surgeon Ben Carson said that poverty is just a state of mind, you're saying he was wrong?
Who am I to disagree with a man like Ben Carson?
You're a thinking human being.
I mean, yes, I'm saying he was wrong, but I mean, just being a good brain surgeon doesn't mean you know anything about society or politics or economics. But but there's this idea of that, right? So if you do someone else, then what they're telling you is that you're a failure. So if you are the failure, right, you're in the middle of a place where the growing, developing industries don't exist, so you can't get a job that's going to lead you to the future, so you're stuck defending a dying industry instead. That's not really actually your fault, but with the American belief that we have, we blame that on ourselves.
No, but we saw with the auto industry. We saw with the auto industry a few years back, where there's new technology, there's hybrids, there's electric cars, but there are people in Detroit who've been working an assembly line for years making gas guzzlers, and that is all they are willing to do. So we see it in the selection of Betsy's area of education. We see it in the push towards vouchers and homeschooling. This administration is anti-intellectual. It is, it is not about advancing the country. It is about keeping us mired in old technologies that are going to keep the guys who've been making money for all these years from petroleum and the petroleum industry. It's going to keep them raking in the bucks. It is all about maintaining the hierarchy.
But I don't know that a lot of the victims of the system realize how
they're
getting played.
They don't. They just need to hear that they're getting their jobs back, to believe that coal country is coming back as coal country is ridiculous.
I don't think it's any kind of like purposeful. There's a cabal at the top who's like trying to keep everybody in their place or anything like that. I think there's just a lot of different groups with heads up their own asses about specific causes. I think I think the voucher people, they've got their own thing going on, and I don't think it's deliberately about.
No. I'm not saying there's some sort of like Bilderberg cabal. I'm not getting into the conspiracy theories.
$9 billion
but
monopoly on student loans.
Well, that's the thing. You don't have to believe in conspiracy theories to see that there is collusion amongst the wealthy. And they are going to do what they can to keep the money in their circles.
Let's take Betsy DeVos. That's a great example. Collusion. She's trying to create a multi-trillion-dollar monopoly of the student loan industry. So I do think there are people on the top who are intentionally going into those things to make money, and they're lying to these naive Christian people like, this will protect your children from the devil. If you're, I have sympathy for parents. There's reasons why I don't have kids, because I don't want to raise kids in this world. So I realize that parents have fears of what their kids will be influenced by, and she's exploiting those fears. I don't think she's a stupid woman, and I think the people up on top, I think they know that there's a huge money-making opportunity in education, student loans, and they're using that, So I actually do, maybe call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think there are people on top who are pushing these ideas because they're going to make money.
Well, I also want to blame just a cult. So I studied economics in college and grad school, and we learned a lot about the voucher systems and how, like, in theory, they're very good. In theory, they're going to help people have the optimal level of education that they want for their kids, and they can have more choice, and it's going to be great. And that's just one of a part of many things that a big chunk of our country believes that they learn in this kind of conservative doctrine of looking at policies and looking at the world. It's not necessarily bad, but they think about, what's the best economic good and what gives more people the most amount of choice. And a lot of it sounds great on paper, and for a while I did buy into it. But it took me some time and maybe like deprogramming after college to realize, oh, hey, there's a lot of flaws in this too. But I think when you get into a group of people, you get groupthink. And there's a lot of groupthink among these rich folks who have maybe bought into all of the stories and lines you hear about policy that are conservative, and they're devoted to those things. And Betsy DeVos is one of them. Now, it also happens that they have ways to make a heck of a lot of money off of this stuff, too. And I think that's a part of it. But it's both things. It's their wacky, weird economics textbook culture that is not even like a full economics textbook because it only has half of the economics theory in it,
right?
Along with their own
and not
Shady
willing to
corruption.
realize that theory doesn't always reconcile with real life. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things like, the voucher system sounded great. We tried it didn't work. Move on with your life. A lot of things sound good in theory. The only way is put it in practice, and then practice has to trump theory.
And the crazy thing is,
Just
Trump's whole
has
thing.
to.
Trump's whole thing has made me such a states' rights person. It's almost comical and very ironic because I think someone like Betsy DeVos shouldn't be trying to establish a voucher system across America or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of
a
bizarre.
state's job to decide, even a city's job to decide. But definitely,